Hi, and welcome to another edition of Savage Watch's Killer Chronicles with Terry Sutton and obviously Mike Bouchard. And this time we're going to be talking about a interesting personality, shall we say, leader of a cult based out of New Jersey and then eventually Connecticut, a man by the name of Brother Julius Shacknow, and his organization called The Work. Mike, or shall I say Michael Bouchard, wrote a book about Brother Julius and the work. And we're going to ask him a couple of questions about it. So, Mike, how did you get interested in writing about this book, aside from the fact that I had told you about, this Brother Julius?
The first thing that comes to mind is when you and I were originally discussing Paul Sweetman, uh, that leg that was found on the golf course in New Britain. Um, as I started to research, the majority of the people don't realize that how large of a cult uh, actually existed in Connecticut back in the 1970s, all the way up to the 90s. We had over 500 members, and they almost associated it with the same type of work as the Branch Davidian. Um, some people say that they believe Julius was even more dangerous, um, but that's something that most people don't even know existed in Connecticut. And Julius himself is kind of interesting because if you think about it, he originally he started the cult back in, let's say, the late 60s in Dover, New Jersey. Um, there was a mysterious fire next an apartment next to his, um, and he had threatened the guy one day that he was going to burn in hell. Well, what happened? The guy's house caught on fire. 7 of his kids passed away. Um, he also, right after that, his wife left because there was, besides the fire, there's also sexual abuse of the kids going on in the house. She moves to the next town over in Denville. Um, she's 30 years old, Minnie Sweetman. She mysteriously falls and passes away from a head injury. Now here's two, eight
Now,
homicides.
now,
Eight
Minnie
homicides.
Sweetman was at one time married to Paul Sweetman, and then Paul Sweetman and all these others got involved in the cult. So, I guess from what your research indicated and came up with, and that Julius Shacknow had a whole bunch of wives that he would.
He had 7 wives, and apparently it was common for that cult to swap wives. They'd keep this one for a few years and that one for a few years, and that's one thing I don't think people really have an idea of how cults work. They think it's just a religious based function. Or the truth is that the not only the criminal aspects, but all of the other the sexual assaults, the sexual abuses, the molestation of children. This is a common occurrence in almost every cult, including this cult. I mean, um, Brother Julius was never arrested, although he was accused of sexually assaulting his daughter, a stepdaughter, other younger people, and even members in the cult sexually assaulted younger children. However, you have to remember, like any law enforcement agency, somebody from that cult has to say, hey, this person did this, and they never did. So, the state's attorney just can't come in and prosecute you because of beliefs. He has to have a complaint. And there were never any filed, so there was never any investigations into the accusations.
So aside from you had mentioned before that you believe that he was probably responsible for that fire that killed that neighbor's 7 children. I guess 2 children survived, 7 were killed. There's the mysterious death of Minnie Sweetman, where she may have fallen.
Right.
You believe that that may have been attributed to Julius, and
Well,
obviously we talked about the Sweetman case too, which Paul Sweetman 20 years. Well, it was probably about almost 10 years after Julius had died. He had gone missing, and his leg was found, and eventually the rest of them were found. And two cult members, Sorik Minery and Rudy Hannon, were
Right.
eventually charged, and one was convicted, and they're waiting for the second trial
Right.
to come
Well, you
through.
know, in the original fire in Dover, Julius was a the prime person of interest in the case. He was also actually mentioned in the original police report. Now, with Minnie Sweetman, you know, he just happens to be over the house, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe she knew something about this fire. She knew stuff about the sexual assaults with the two daughters that going on in the house. It wouldn't be the first time that somebody that had information like that fell. You know what I'm saying? Her family, I spoke to her family members, and they were all suspicious of Julius. They hired private investigators to look farther into the case. Um, so I myself, based on other facts that I know, I would not exclude him from being a prime person of interest in any of the 8 homicides.
Okay. I also have a question. Since you wrote, extensively about Brother Julius, also known as Julius Shacknow, what is your take on him without giving too much information? Because we obviously want people to buy the book.
Right.
And the book's name is the Crooked Cross.
It's the Connecticut Cult, the Broken Cross.
Okay, the Connecticut Cult, the Broken Cross.
Right.
How would you describe Julius? Is he evil? Is he crazy? Is he a combination of both?
Well,
Is he a genius?
I think what happened when Julius served in World War II with his 2 brothers. The ship that he was on was struck by some type of weaponry. He was injured. Uh, it seems like all of this developed after him being injured because he had sustained some type of head injury.
Yep.
So I think what happened was, probably due to trauma, he basically developed some type of mental health issues. And the problem when people have that type of psychosis, they actually believe what they're saying. They don't know it to be wrong. His first wife, actually, who met him at one of the hospitals, actually said that he had a nervous breakdown. So when you think of a nervous breakdown, it kind of correlates with all this other psychological issues. I believe he thought he was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. But the funny thing is with him is that his stature continuously moved up. First, he was a prophet. Then he was Jesus Christ. Then he moved all the way to God. So
I think he would refer to himself as the sinful
the
Messiah.
sinful Messiah, just like
Yeah.
he was the one that coined that term. But Dave Koresh also called himself the sinful Messiah, but it was actually Julius Shacknow who coined that phrase.
Yes.
And his thought was, with the sexual abuse and all the stuff that went on in the cult that was evil, he had to portray these crimes so he knew what it was like to be human. Well, I mean, anybody that picks up a Bible, knows that God wouldn't need to know what it is like to be evil if he can't commit sin. So I think, as much as he believed who he thought he was, he knew the difference between right and wrong. I just think he uses that as is kind of a cloaking device to say, hey, I have to. That's not what it was. He knew what he was doing.
Would you say that he had a lot of charisma?
He did. He was like and I use this term a lot, and you laugh, but he's like a used car salesman. And the problem with that is the most vulnerable people are the younger people, high school kids, college kids, and even the drug addicts and alcoholics, because everybody through life looks for purpose.
Yep.
Even myself, I'm older, I have a career, all of this stuff, but we're all really always searching for our own purpose
And identity.
and
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to bring people like that into the cult. They're young, they're looking for this, you know. So yeah, it's not too hard, and it's really brainwashing is what they do. First the thing is meditation. Meditation is the worst thing that there is, and I'll tell you why. Especially if somebody's trying to brainwash you, because when you meditate, what do? All of your thoughts are gone. So if there's no, it's like an empty room. Once your thoughts are gone, they fill it up with their furniture. So and it's funny because a lot of most of the individuals that buy the book
Yeah.
are college age.
And I think you've said that college age kids were very vulnerable, and you've said that
Yeah.
in the past that you said that the people more likely to fall for him and other cult-like figures are very educated
Right.
individuals.
Well, educated individuals are probably the easiest to brainwash because they're always looking for that debate.
Okay.
And once you plant that seed in their head that they're wrong, then you've got them hook, line, and sinker. And the problem with Julius's or any cult, but Julius's cult, the work, is still a functioning cult in Connecticut. They try to hide, but you can't hide from anybody. We know you're out there, and that's just how it is. But they're still active.
How many people do you think are still active? Do you
Well,
have any?
it's hard to say. I mean, at one time their numbers were as high as 500
When he was alive, yeah.
when he was alive, but it could be anywhere up to 100. It's hard to
Wow,
tell.
that's a lot.
But
That's a
but
lot.
the problem is a dozen or more are still just as bad as 100. Because you think
Yeah.
about how many people that it influences. Now, if a cult was trying to bring you in under religious pretenses, right? Why would they want all your money? Why would they want all your property? It's just it's a scam. I mean that's all it is. I mean
Yeah, I had some relatives that were involved in a cult
right.
decades ago. So yeah, I've heard the
So
stories.
you get the idea. Yeah, it's all scam.
Um, regarding Brother Julius, were there any things that you admired about him? Or
Actually, no. He wrote a book, and I don't remember the exact name of it. And to get this book, the book now sells for like about $100. But I went on eBay and I found a cheap copy for $5. And what it was his rendition of the Bible, where God and Jesus were taken out, and he put himself there. I looked at it, and it was just like such a, you know what? It was. I threw it in the garbage. I threw it in the garbage. I couldn't even read it. The one funny thing was though, it was written in layman's terms, so you could actually understand it.
okay.
However, just his intent of considering, putting himself in, positions where he wasn't supposed to be. I got the sky, threw it right in the garbage can, and that's wherever it is now. Who knows?
I'd say probably about 25 years ago, after the Branch Davidians incident in Waco, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
New England Cable News did a 4-point segment, or maybe it wasn't four. Well, it's in 4 different parts, and you could see it on YouTube where they interviewed Jack now, and they talked about the cult. They talked about some of the allegations there,
Right.
and I looked at it. He was definitely, I wouldn't say charismatic, but very stern, and he very rarely gave out interviews, but it did provide some interesting insight about the cult. I mean, there were his members did record labels. They had these real estate companies, and
Right. And the interesting thing is, even though those businesses were shifty, he had 5 Century 21s in Connecticut that were run by cult members.
Okay.
The cult members were getting paid really substandard wages. Some of them worked there for free, but the businesses were taking in about $2 million a year. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, until all of these bad business deals that Julius made started hitting the fan, and all of a sudden the newspapers took notice and the media took notice. Uh, uh, Century 21, pulled its franchise from him. Said, hey, you know what, we're done. Um,
And it
but
was
and
Paul
what he was
Sweetman that was it was Paul Sweetman that was really making a lot of the business deals. And
right.
you know, I guess, would you say that Sweetman was killed by other cult members because of hidden money or power? I mean, obviously this happened
Yeah,
after.
it was. I think it was first about power, second about money, because if you
Okay.
have to look at how the cult was set up, there were three primary people. You had Julius, who was supposed to be Jesus. You
Yep.
had Paul Sweetman, who was the lead apostle. And the weird thing is, like I explained to you, his wife, not Sweetman's wife, but
Okay.
Julius's wife, who ended up turning into Paul's wife, uh, Joan, was the Holy Spirit. But in the Bible, there are no females especially in the Trinity. There are none. So you could tell that these people were just winging it. And I had spoke to one cult member who was a female, said that the females had little or no significance in the cult. They were like doormats. Yeah, so to elevate a female to that position,
Mhm.
it was like today's politics. I mean, it was like a presidential race. Um, but what people don't realize is the two people involved in Sweetman's homicide, um, Soric Minery
Salt winery, yeah.
was one of the first, well, not the first, but
He was
born
born
into
into
the
the
cult.
cult. Yeah. And Rudy Hannon is the real interesting one.
The real interesting one about Rudy Hannon, and even the police didn't know this, and I found it out by accident. Rudy Hannon was born in 1945. He was actually Julia Schaffnau's son.
I was surprised about that. Yeah.
Illegitimate son.
Illegitimate son.
Wow.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I did
because
not know that.
right, because Julius actually he had a son that actually passed away at birth. A
Okay.
lot of people don't know that. A lot of this stuff is in the book,
Okay.
but yeah. So now you have uh, Joan Sweetman, who was married to Paul Sweetman at the time. Paul goes missing in 2004,
Yeah.
and who takes him out is a cult member, and then technically Julius's son takes him out.
Yeah.
Now and the unfortunate thing is Joan died in 2011, but she was the one that kind of orchestrated the homicide.
Yes.
And she lied to everybody. She said Paul was here doing this. He was doing this over here. That and they all knew he was dead. So
All right. Do you think there are other people that were involved in Paul Sweetman's death?
from what I've heard, there are possibly two more people that might get indicted.
Okay. It's been a
And
couple of years.
right, and they're involved in the cult too. So
There's I think one of those people is one that has been mentioned to me by a
yeah,
former
quite a
cult
few
member
times.
too.
Yeah.
One guy that's very disliked,
Right.
very, very
And I know
despised.
exactly who he is. Well, you know what,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what, you know what, you know what the rule of thumb is. If you don't want to get killed, don't join a cult.
Yeah.
You know.
So do you have any closing thoughts about about writing this book? What did you take
Well,
away from the
like any book, the difference between my books and the other books is I'm not out here to make $1 million on the books. I'm not here to bolster or sensationalize any of the stories, because if you really think about it, even a story like this with as many people is Julius wronged,
Yep.
there's nothing to be glamorized by any of that. It's not a glamorous story. And, I think a lot of people that buy the books are actually cult members themselves. You know why? His cult members. You know why? Because the left hand never knew what the right hand was doing.
Okay.
They learned more about what was going on when they were members by reading what was in the book, and but that's how that's even like big business,
Do you
you
still
never
have
know.
do you still have cult members reaching out to you? Former cult members?
It's funny because I had one, and I think she was fishing. It was a relative of Minnie Sweetman's. Well, that's what she said. Or yeah, her last name was Sweetman. I'm not going to put out her first name.
Okay.
But I said, okay, well, you want information. I figure at the same time, maybe I can get some information for me to help me, further this Minnie Sweetman case that was
Sure.
going on in Denville. And most people that are not fishing for information will contact you
Okay.
back. I gave her my email address. I gave her my phone number, and she never, she never called. So my thought on that is she was probably just looking for information,
Sure.
and that's what it was. Unfortunately, she would have been somebody interesting to talk to because Julius's daughter and his stepdaughter, who were in that Dover Street apartment at the time of that fire and Minnie Sweetman's death, they will not contact me. And
You you
if
think
you're living in that apartment, you knew what was going
something
on,
happened? You
right?
knew that there was
And I have no respect for people like that. You know why? Because you're just as evil as the people that did the crime. You're just as guilty as the person that did the crime. If you can't talk about it, you're hiding something. So shame on you.
okay. Mike, we're going to change gears. You think we've probably talked enough about the cult, right? Or we need to ask a couple more questions. I was going to ask you, you know, maybe we need to. Are you comfortable where we go on a segment about talking about Pallades and some of these other art bells and the coast to coast and the damage that might do?
Well,
To, I should say damage.
we can just add let that we can just let the camera roll, and we can add that in here with this.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with the George Knapps, the Dave Pallades,
Let me ask the question first, sir.
Norries. Okay. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question there. Um, Mike, you've been very critical of certain personalities, whether it's a Bob Lazar, a George Norrie from Coast to Coast, a George Knapp, and even the late great Art Bell. Um, you feel that they tend to do a disservice because they promote a lot of conspiracy theories and folklore and mistruths. Why
Well,
do you feel?
yeah, they do because when I was researching the Joan Risch case, the Dennis Lloyd Martin case, um, even the Bob Lazar case, all of these people, and they're always the same people: George Knapp, George Norrie, Dave Pilatus, and now you got that new one, Jeremy Corbell.
Okay.
These people are here to make money on you. They're not here to, you know, I don't believe conspiracy theory. You know what? That's just like some. I have words for that, but I'm not gonna say them on here because they'll get bleeped out. But what they do is they take a story like Dave Platus and Knapp, right? Dennis Lloyd Martin, 7-year-old, went missing in the Smoky Mountains in June 14th of '69.
Yep.
7-year-old. You've got Pilatus saying, "Oh, there were people running around the woods in animal clothes." He just bolsters his stories. You've got Norrie on and Art Bell on these Midnight in the Desert or Coast to Coast,
Yep.
just bolstering this stuff up. And what they don't like about me, and I know they don't like me, but that's okay because my books are based on interviews. They're based on police reports, real police reports. They're not they're biased. The reader makes up their own mind of what they think based on real information.
Okay.
And the big thing is I have an investigative background. These people have no background.
Well, Pallades was a police officer, wasn't he?
He was, but you know, the problem with him is, and you and I talked about this, um, he became a car salesman.
Okay.
You know, like my book for Forever Searching, the Dennis Lloyd Martin case, I think the book is like maybe $14, right? It's probably 150 pages, whatever. But it's based on all actual reports and interviews with significant people, like everybody that was actually involved, including Harold Key. It's all real information. Dave's books are all $80 books, and half of the stuff is witch doctor material, you know, and witch doctor material. And, you know, it takes a 7-year-old disappearance is a tragedy. Any person's disappearance is a tragedy, but yet you're making $80 on a book, which proves no real fact, except you believe that the field agent, James Reich, committed suicide because he investigated the case wrong or knew something, which I talked to Reich's son. I got Reich's records from the FBI. That wasn't the case. I know why he died. I know where he died. I know how he died. I didn't put that in my book because that has no bearing on the case. It had nothing to do with the case. But they'll use things like this as an aha factor to draw people in when it's got nothing to do with the case. So
yeah,
no,
Pallades,
you know.
I was going to say Pallades kind of reminds me of that former police officer that's been one of the ringleaders of the Sandy Hook shooting denial movement, or ever, you know, they call them truthers, and we actually know that they're liars. Now that I've said that, we're going to probably be barraged by a whole bunch of hate mail.
That's okay.
But he was a police officer, and I know that I guess you know, Alex Jones got in all sorts of trouble and is losing, you know, lost a lawsuit by some of the family members of the victims there. But I mean, that's another case there where you had all, you know, what, 28 people die from a kid that was nuts.
You know, the thing is, I am not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, things are either done or not done on purpose. There is no such thing as coincidences. There may be similarities, but not coincidences. You know, there was no conspiracy about what happened at Sandy Hook. We know what happened at Sandy Hook. Somebody with a mental health issue was given access to firearms that he shouldn't have had access to. He went in, he created havoc, death, and destruction. And that's it. There is no conspiracy about that. I mean, so for somebody to create a conspiracy over a tragedy like that, you know, I can't have a respect for a person like that. And then you go as far as, you know, Bob Laser, who is this UFOologist who is trying to hoodwink the world into believing that, you know, this S4 has UFOs in it. You know, yeah, bolstering information just for sales is, you know, it's just wrong. It's all there is. It's wrong. So
yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are always. It could be ufologists, could be paranormal people, and I believe in the paranormal. I believe in UFOs, but you've got people that are, you know, peddling bad information. Even I, who have talked to some people in the paranormal who have said that they were invited to go on shows. According to them, they declined it because of the fact that the shows wanted to over exaggerate and at times lie.
I've done that myself too. I've had people asking me to do shows for this, that, and the other thing, and they wanted me to
lie and exaggerate.
Not only lie, embellish, and then
embellish. That's the right way.
And take it to a direction that it was no. They because you know their business is sales. You know, like a lot of podcasts. Joan Risch, like I said, Joan Risch, Dennis Martin. A lot of these podcasts and there's hundreds of them out there. When you start really researching and investigating a case, you realize half of that stuff that's there is garbage, because these people are just like, they're like a recycling plant. They take information from this podcast and just transfer it to this one, to this one, to this one. They add nothing new into the equation, and yet people believe it. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my website, I get most of my information from other news sources. I don't pretend to be groundbreaking. Once in a while, if I do a newspaper article on certain cases, whether they're in my own state or even outside, that's a different story, because I'll be getting sources that are not readily available. And yes, at times I am told information that I'm not allowed to put on the website, that if released could compromise an investigation.
Well, mine is a little different than that. With my books,
You're getting the information that's not released to the public.
right? Well, it is, and you have to remember, yeah, even though I'm still active law enforcement, when I'm writing a book, I can't use any of that access to gain information. But still, as a civilian, actually, you can get more information as a civilian than you can on any form from the police department. Because all you get there is demographics. The real information is based on the people that you interview. And I interview, like Dennis Martin, I interviewed everybody from the ranger that was there to an eyewitness to family members to everybody to, come up. Even Richard French, who nobody could find, I found him in the La Rosa case. Barry Prentice.
La Rosa, yeah, Barry Prentice.
I found him too. So, yeah. I just think it's a bad idea to promote information that's not accurate and gives a misrepresentation of the case, because it's not doing anybody justice. It just isn't, so.
Okay.
But see, I should start putting misinformation in my books, because they seem to sell better when you come up with a witch doctor story, And I mean, I don't want, it's horrible, but I mean, I know it sounds like I'm beating up on, Nori, Knapp, Pilatus, Bell, who is that? That new one, Cobo, and yeah, all those other ones. But it's not that I have nothing better to do than beat you up. But these are situations where, in one half, they're tragic situations. You shouldn't be embellishing them to make money, okay? And on the other side, you shouldn't be lying about crap to sell books or movies.
Well, unfortunately, in true crime, very rarely do the victims' families make money, unless, of course, it's a police-involved shooting, and they make out like that. But a lot of times the movie makers, there's movies being made, or there's documentaries being made, these podcasts to make money off the crime. Murderbilia, that's a big one. I mean, I admit that with my website, yeah, I make a little bit of money there, but at the same time, I'm giving a lot of the cases I have on my site there. Those are requested by either family members or friends of the family there to promote the case there. But you've got other situations where authors, even some podcasters are saying stuff that the family doesn't want, that it may actually hurt the family because of allegations that are not true.
Well, what I found in a lot of these cases, like I told you, I myself, being the writer, choose to not put things in the book. And the things that I've learned about people, especially like in the La Rosa case and the Martin case, the Risch case, there were things in there that if they were put in there, books would be flying off the shelf like they had wings. But it's none of your business.
Yeah.
I'm privy to it because I did the interviews, but there's stuff in there that, one, has nothing to do with the case. And I'm not going to throw people's dirty laundry out just to entertain society, because, you know, that's just how it is. You know.
Yeah, the way I feel about it with my website and my articles is that there's one magic word for me, and that's called lawsuit.
Well,
So
I'm not worried about that, because everything I put in there is out of a report, and
yeah,
I keep copies of the reports. But it's just, you know, I just don't see turning a tragedy
you're
into,
right.
into a business. I mean, I put stuff out to inform people, not to sell books for those that, you know.
Well, they do call true crime. It's been called murder porn because some people are so addicted to it. That's they watch all these different datelines. They'll go on all these different podcasts, and you know, I at times kind of get tired of it. Like there's been like weeks where I haven't even done anything with my website. Uh, most of the newspaper articles I write are not even about true crime. It's about human interest stories or public health stuff there. But sometimes I even get, tired of it. But there is, there is a big business with true crime. And like I said, whether it's murderabilia or these movies being made there, and in the end, the victims' families or the victims themselves, don't really see much money out of it. In fact,
Right.
if anything, it kind of rehashes the pain. I'm careful at times, writing articles where some people don't
Well,
even want.
you know what's funny is every book that I've done involving crimes or disappearances or stuff like that, the first half a dozen or dozen people that buy it are actually family members, because they weren't able to gather all of the information I was. As a matter of fact, uh, McCarter, Dwayne McCarter, who was the primary park ranger at the time when Dennis went
Dennis
missing,
Martin, okay.
uh, he got a copy of the book. See, because the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. And a lot of family members I talked to didn't know about that person, didn't know about this person, didn't know about that one. Why? Because they weren't all in the same place at the same time. So it would have been impossible. So, so you just hope it informs them, just like the cult. For these people that are thinking about joining the cult, these younger people, here's some information, read it and understand it before you make a life altering decision, because, and missing in Connecticut, all these people that have disappeared, maybe somebody that knows something about it, one of these disappearances you know, will finally come to terms and say, hey, you know what, I know something about it and I need to contact law enforcement or whoever, you know, just to solve the case. Because every time a person goes missing, at least 12 people are affected by it: relatives, friends, co-workers. So it's not like a one victim crime. It's it's like a dandelion root. So, hopefully it appeals to somebody's sense of morality, if we still have that
Yeah.
nowadays.
You mentioned a very interesting point there because I remember the Lisa Ziegert case. My father's administrative assistant was friends with Lisa's brother. Lisa Ziegert went missing in Agawam, Massachusetts, was found murdered in a brutal case. I think she was sexually assaulted and obviously, I think, stabbed to death. Um, but it wasn't just not, her parents obviously affected her friends, her family, but there were people that were accused that, for years people would say, well, you're a suspect, you're a suspect. And in the end, they weren't the ones found guilty. It was another guy from, I think, Longmeadow, Massachusetts, East Longmeadow, that came across her and did the crime there. So, yeah, in a lot of these cases there, I'm finding out there that the people that are listed as suspects for a long time are they become
Right,
victims
and
because of
that
their
was
reputation.
the same way in the Joe and Risch case. They had, if you go onto all these online sources, they have a dozen people that they think are suspects. Uh, by actual real paperwork and reports and everything else, I was able to eliminate all of them. I'm not going to tell you the ending of the book, what I believe it was. There's only two possible ones, and nothing had to do with a suspect. Uh, So, and that book is called, that's Masquerade, the Joan Risch case.
Sure.
In the Forever Searching, the Dennis Martin case, they had one person that the mother always believed did it, but after interviewing him and talking to him, everything that was suspicious about him, he gave me an explanation for it. And you listen, when you're a cop long enough, you know when they're lying. And the guy was too fluent with his information, And I asked him questions that he couldn't rehearse because, just like Barry Prentice in Susan LaRosa's case. Yeah. So and Barry, I'll tell you what, out of that, everybody ever interviewed in that whole case, he was the only one that had enough whats to tell me what exactly happened. I sent that information to Vernon Police Department. Did they do anything with it? I don't know. Who knows?
Who knows? The problem with the whole case, and you and I have discussed that with Susan LaRosa, is because when you tie into Lisa White, Vernon, who's been missing, from Vernon in 74, you tie in Debbie Spickler, who went missing in 1968 from Vernon.
Right.
The big one, 1973, Janice Pocket in Tolland, which is the town over from Vernon. You had others in East Windsor. Olinsky was 1975. I think Don Peterson from Wyndham in 1975 or 76. And there was Patty Luce from Vernon in 78 who was found missing. Well, it went missing.
Once
a whole bunch of them.
There seems to be two different MOs in that case.
Okay.
The first case, they were younger white females from 68 to let's say all the way up to Susan LaRosa in 75. And then the ages started going up. But the difference with the younger women or girls, their bodies were hidden.
Yes.
Never found. The older ones after that point were just dumped on the roadside. So there's a different MO there. However, what people fail to realize, and I argue back and forth, I argue with everybody about it, is that was a geographical predator. And you and I have discussed who that person was, and I know he's the one that did it. I don't care what anybody says. And people have confirmed that he was involved in at least one of the homicides because they were there and they saw it. It was the same person.
Yeah, and chances are, well, as we discussed before with Susan LaRosa, a few years earlier, her sister-in-law, I guess she wasn't married yet to
Irene,
husband.
Irene LaRosa. Well, it's funny because her brother, said he reported her missing.
Yeah.
He never reported her missing. And then in 73, his wife mysteriously disappears and her body's found in 78.
Yeah.
Well, listen, there's no coincidence. There's no, let's face it, there's a link. And if there's 2 links, there's 3 links, there's 4 links, there's 5 links. And what a lot of people don't realize is he had bought an ambulance and converted it into a soundproof vehicle. And he made a statement to Barry Prentice because Barry went to do some work on it. And Barry said, "What the hell are you soundproofing it for?" And he says to Barry, "Because I could put anybody in the back of it and do what I want." When Spickler went missing, there was a van. When White went missing, there was a van, so on and so on. And they were all in that confined area. So you know what? Listen, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It may take evidence, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist. So.
Okay. Mike, can we take a break? I got a couple phone calls here.